A fearsome villain creates a foolproof plan to steal the moon, not knowing he's about to meet three orphans who will change his life forever. That is why today on The Summarizer, Despicable Me. The story starts in Egypt where everything seems normal as a group of tourists enjoy their visit. But due to an accident, they discover that one of the pyramids is fake because someone has stolen the original. Because of this, countries around the world are guarding their famous monuments with lots of security to stop any other villains from pulling a similar heist. Meanwhile, we meet Gru, who's walking down the street and sees a kid crying over a lost ice cream. So he gives him a balloon shaped like a dog, only to pop it in his face seconds later, because Gru is really a villain who loves to cause trouble. Then he freezes the people at a cafe to skip the line, drives a super weird vehicle, and arrives at his house, which is the darkest and creepiest in the neighborhood. When he gets home, he threatens his neighbor since his dog has been wandering in his yard, then reunites with his scary pet for lunch. But they're interrupted by three girls selling cookies. To avoid talking to them, he pretends to be the answering machine. Next, he gets a call from Dr. Nefario, who's super disappointed because someone stole an Egyptian pyramid, making other villains look like total losers. Hearing this, Gru heads to a secret place in his house filled with minions, these quirky yellow pill-like creatures who work for him in what looks like a massive lab. They all gather around Gru, making him feel like a celebrity. This is the perfect moment for him to announce his next big plan, one that's even bigger than stealing the pyramids. Brains they need to organize to get a top-secret shrink ray that will help them pull off the heist of the century, stealing the moon. For a moment, everyone's excited, but Dr. Nefario quickly points out how expensive it would be, so Gru decides to get another loan from the bank. Meanwhile, the three cookie-selling girls named Margot, Edith, and Agnes return to the orphanage where they're treated badly by the lady in charge. On his way to the bank, Gru gets a call from his mom, who wants to congratulate him for stealing the pyramid, but she mocks him when she finds out he didn't do it. Gru then arrives at the Bank of Evil, hidden away to meet with the director and pitch his plan. A flashback shows him as a kid, dreaming of going to the moon, only to be mocked by his mom. There, he meets a weird guy named Vector, who tries to impress Gru by saying he's also there for a loan to commit big crimes. Gru ignores him and tries to get away. Minutes later, he presents his moon-stealing idea to the director, who likes it but immediately asks for the shrink ray, and since Gru doesn't have it yet, he gets no loan. Director says there are younger, more efficient villains like Vector, who's actually the pyramid thief. He tells Gru to come back for the loan once he has the shrink ray, so now Gru leaves super annoyed and freezes Vector's head in anger. Days later, somewhere in the world, successful tests are run with the shrink ray, making an elephant tiny. But our hero shows up with some minions to steal it and rushes out. Sort of, because his plan is foiled when Vector uses a high-tech machine to steal the shrink ray, sparking a chase that ends with Vector winning. That night, the three orphans pray for someone good to adopt them soon, because they don't want to stay at the orphanage. The next day, Gru disguises himself to sneak into Vector's fortress and steal the shrink ray. Gru tries over and over again, but keeps getting hurt by Vector's security measures. Later, he sees the three orphans easily get into the fortress, so this gives him a new idea. He asks his trusted scientist to make robot cookies and then goes to the orphanage to adopt the three girls. He presents his adoption request, helped by the minions who write a flawless letter, and convinces the lady in charge with his speech. The three girls are thrilled to meet their new parents, but are disappointed when they see Gru, except the youngest who runs to hug him. Meanwhile, Vector is playing with the shrink ray, shrinking everything, when he gets a mysterious call asking him to return it. He says he wants to take down Gru first. Later, Gru and his new daughters arrive home. They meet his ferocious pet, and he sets up a place for them to eat and go to the bathroom like puppies. He explains the house rules. Don't touch anything, don't bother him while he's working, and no loud noises ever. Then he leaves them for the next 6 hours. He heads to his secret lab to check out Dr. Nefario's new inventions, including an anti-gravity serum, while the girls accidentally find the entrance to the lab. When Gru sees the robot cookies in action, he realizes the girls are in the lab, asking about everything they see. One of them disintegrates Agnes's unicorn, and Gru sends three minions to get a new toy. They go outside dressed like a normal family but cause some chaos at the supermarket. Later, Gru finds out his new daughters made a mess at home, so he orders them to bed. The oldest says she'll never call him dad, and the youngest asks him to read a story, but he ignores them because he just needs them for his plan. At least the minions find a new toy for Agnes. The next morning, Gru asks the girls to sell the robot cookies, but it's time for their dance class, so he takes them to the dance school first. During class, Agnes makes him promise to come to the ballet recital. Then they head to Vector's fortress with a cart full of robot cookies, and the girls get inside quickly. This way, the robot cookies locate the shrink ray, disable the vault door, and make a hole in the wall so our protagonist can get in with a couple of minions. Things get tricky when the same robot cookies accidentally seal the hole, wrapping them inside and causing a bit of chaos. Luckily, Gru takes control and decides to escape through the front door. As they run, they bump into Vector, so they detour through a ventilation duct and accidentally fall into the same room as him. Miraculously, they manage to get out without being seen. On the way home, the girls spot an amusement park and beg Gru to go. At first, he doesn't want to, but then agrees, thinking it's the perfect way to ditch them since he doesn't need them anymore. But his plan fails because the girls are too young and need an adult to ride the roller coaster. Soon after, Agnes sees a giant unicorn plushie and begs for it. The girls hit the target, but the vendor says they had to knock it down, so he doesn't give them the prize. Gru decides to smash the place to grab the unicorn by force and make little Agnes happy. The best part is, he ends up having fun with them all afternoon. But when they get home, Dr. Nefario is furious because Gru shouldn't be getting distracted from his mission. Just then, Gru makes a video call to the director of the Bank of Evil to tell him he got the shrink ray and explains his plan, but the girls interrupt the presentation. This messes things up so much that the director denies the loan, saying Gru is old, distracted, and not as capable as the younger villains, reminding Gru of all his childhood traumas caused by his mom. With no other choice, Gru gathers the minions to tell them what happened and that they don't have enough money for the moon heist. Luckily, the three girls hear this and give him all their savings to help out. Seeing this, the rest of the minions chip in with their belongings, so they all start working with cheap, recycled materials and anything they can find to build the rocket. Time passes with their daily routine, and Gru starts to enjoy having the girls around. Unfortunately, Dr. Nefario doesn't like this relationship since it's distracting Gru from the original plan. Meanwhile, the director of the Bank of Evil meets with his son, who turns out to be Vector, whose real name is Victor. His dad scolds him for losing the shrink ray, and Victor promises to get it back soon. Instead of perfecting his plan, Gru agrees to read a bedtime story to please his adoptive daughters. At first, he's reluctant, but he ends up enjoying the moment with them. After leaving their room, the scientist reminds Gru that he's scheduled to go to the moon in 48 hours. Gru tries to convince him to delay the launch since it coincides with the girls' ballet recital, but he can't change his mind. The next day, Gru is having tea with the girls when the orphanage lady shows up to take them back. She says she got Gru's letter, and even though Gru is confused, he lets them go. This is actually Dr. Nefario's doing to force Gru to focus on the plan. Over the next few days, our favorite villain feels really sad about being separated from the girls. Still, he prepares for the mission, and when the launch time comes, one of the minions slips the ballet recital ticket into Gru's pocket. As the countdown ends, the rocket takes off successfully. Vector shows up at the right moment to try and stop them, but Gru knocks him out with a magnetic gun. So now Gru reaches the moon and uses the shrink ray to reduce it to the size of an orange. He's thrilled until he sees the ballet recital ticket floating around. Realizing he still has time to make it, he speeds back while the girls hold on to hope he'll show up in the audience. Dr. Nefario discovers the shrink ray's effect is temporary, so he tries to contact Gru, but can't reach him, so he decides to find Gru quickly. The ballet recital starts, and Vector mysteriously shows up in the audience. Luckily, Gru lands just in time and rushes in, only to find the show has ended. In the reserve seat, he finds a note from the girls, which is actually from Vector, revealing he's kidnapped the girls in exchange for the moon. Gru rushes back to his mansion and hands over the moon. The problem is Vector decides to keep the girls for a bit longer, infuriating Gru. Amazingly, Gru dodges Vector's attacks and the vicious shark in the fortress. Vector escapes in a flying pod, and Gru tries to cling on but loses strength and falls. Fortunately, Dr. Nefario and the minions arrive just in time to rescue him. A new chase begins as the scientist explains that shrunken objects return to their original size based on their mass. This means bigger objects revert faster. The moon starts growing, hitting Vector and rolling through the pod, causing massive damage. The girls are freed and find an escape hatch. Gru urges them to jump to his ship, assuring them he'll protect them. The two younger girls jump, but Margot hesitates. When she finally decides to jump, Vector grabs her. Luckily, the moon accidentally knocks Vector away, making him fall. Margot ends up dangling from a rope and Gru goes after her, but they both fall unexpectedly. But in a miraculous moment, the minions create a human chain to save them. Meanwhile, the moon keeps growing until it hits a button, sending it back to space, trapping Vector on it. Back home, everything returns to normal. Gru reads a new bedtime story he wrote, reflecting his new life with the girls. The three girls put on a special ballet show for the minions, their adoptive dad, and their new grandma, who finally admits she's proud of Gru. The music changes, and everyone convinces Gru to join the stage for a grand performance with his forbidden dance moves, becoming one big happy family. That was Despicable Me 1. When our favorite villain is getting used to his new life as a dad, he gets a mission from the Anti-Villain League to catch the thief of a secret lab. That is why today on the Summarizer, Despicable Me 2. The story of Gru continues when, somewhere in the Arctic, a huge base of operations gets an unexpected visit from a gigantic magnet that incredibly manages to steal the entire facility, vehicles, and its employees. On the other hand, we see our favorite villain who has stopped being the bad guy from the first movie. Now he's at his little Agnes's birthday party, and with the help of the minions, they put on a big show from the princess's kingdom. Things get complicated when they receive a call saying the person who's supposed to dress up as the princess can't make it. So Gru has no choice but to take on the most important role of the birthday party. Because of this, his neighbor wants to introduce him to one of her single friends, but he's not interested at all. Later, he gets a visit from Agent Lucy Wilde, who asks him to come with her somewhere. He refuses and tries to attack her, but she quickly handles him and uses her special skills to knock him out. She locks him in the trunk of her car, and a couple of minions discover what's happening, so they follow her to try and rescue their boss. Lucy drives to a secret office located under the sea, and once they arrive, she frees Gru and the two minions with him. There, she introduces her boss Silas, who happens to be the director of the Anti-Villain League, and they tell him about what happened at the Arctic lab. It turns out they were developing a serum called PX that causes transmutation. When injected, it turns a creature into its worst, most evil version, making it a huge threat. They ask for his help as a former villain to analyze the behavior of whoever is behind all this, but Gru isn't interested in getting involved, so he decides to leave. At the last moment, Agent Lucy tells him she's been following his work as a villain and was impressed, so she gives him a card in case he changes his mind and provides a boat for him to return to shore. Back home, one of his daughters asks if he will go on the date with his neighbor's friend. This makes Gru remember a moment from his childhood when he tried to ask a girl out but was humiliated by everyone, leaving him traumatized. Before going to bed, he discovers that his oldest daughter, Margot, is chatting with someone, so he starts interrogating her because he doesn't want her talking to a boy. Then he goes to the secret lab where the minions are making jelly, which has become Gru's new business. The problem is, the jelly tastes awful, causing some chaos. Things get even more complicated when Dr. Nefario admits he misses being evil and doesn't enjoy making jelly. And now he has received a job offer elsewhere and decides to resign. At first, Gru disagrees, but then he decides to give him an honorary send-off through the main door. Meanwhile, the minion in charge of cleaning the house hears the doorbell ring, and upon opening the door, a strange figure kidnaps him. The next morning, Gru's three daughters create a profile for him on a dating website with his best photos, but he disapproves of this, so he takes the laptop away and tells them he has been hired by an agency to go undercover and save the world as a spy. This excites the girls and some of the minions who dress up to accompany him to the mall. They all go to a coffee shop where Agent Lucy works, trying to make everyone believe she has a normal life. The important thing is that from now on, she will be his partner on this mission, and she's surprised to meet the minions. But one of them falls head over heels for Lucy upon seeing her for the first time and instantly imagines a life with her. Gru and Lucy start their undercover mission, trying to find the lab thief when they're interrupted by Eduardo Perez, a very patriotic Mexican and the owner of a restaurant across the mall. Eduardo has come to order 200 cupcakes because he's throwing a party soon. And while talking, Gru realizes the man looks a lot like a villain named El Macho. Years ago, this dangerous man caused a lot of trouble somewhere in the country, but supposedly died while performing an incredible stunt in a volcano, so Gru thinks he's their target. Back home, Gru makes sure his daughters have done all their homework, and one of them recites a poem she's preparing for Mother's Day at school. And this leads to a touching moment, since the girl doesn't have a mother. The minions enjoy their free time with singing, betting, and lots of ice cream. When Gru enters his lab, he asks two minions to join him, while two others are mysteriously kidnapped. Our favorite villain, the two minions and Agent Lucy manage to sneak into the mall at night. Their plan is to break into Eduardo's restaurant and find out if he's the villain they're looking for. The problem is, they encounter the guardian chicken who starts attacking them until they finally trap it in a capsule. Then they reach the restaurant safe, but only find the secret salsa recipe used in their dishes. Worse, Eduardo arrives at the restaurant and finds his chicken trapped, so he grabs a knife to investigate. But fortunately, Gru and Agent Lucy escape just in time with the minions' help. The next morning, an ice cream truck shows up in front of Gru's house, and a bunch of minions run out in excitement because they love ice cream, but it turns out to be a trap, and they all get kidnapped. At the mall, Gru and Lucy continue their undercover mission when they're surprised by the three girls. Lucy quickly approaches them to introduce herself, and Agnes is thrilled because she thinks Lucy would make a great mom. So Gru quickly gives them money to get them away, and this scene touches Lucy, making her realize Gru is a good father. Soon after, Margot falls in love at first sight with a boy walking on the other side of the fountain. His name is Antonio, and he introduces himself and invites her to have some cookies. Gru decides to enter a Chinese man's shop who is his new suspect, while Lucy is in the coffee shop giving him instructions through an earpiece. Soon, they find something suspicious. But at that moment, the other two girls arrive to tell him about Margot's romantic date. Without hesitating, our favorite villain decides to go after her because he's jealous of her, so he follows them to Fernando's Mexican restaurant, which turns out to be none other than Antonio's dad. Seeing our hero, the vigilant chicken starts acting weird, and Fernando decides to throw a weekend party to celebrate the love between his two kids. Later, the two spies have a meeting with the head of the anti-villain league, where Gru, visibly worked up, insists Fernando is El Macho and needs locking up. But nobody takes him seriously, because they think he's just trying to keep his daughter away from Antonio. Meanwhile, the minions wake up on a deserted island, seemingly kidnapped but actually having a blast. Not knowing they're being watched by some mysterious someone, Gru starts noticing a few minions missing, but figures they just coincided on vacation. But he ain't got time to dig into it, cause his neighbor's friends come to take him on a date. For some reason, our hero wears a wig to dinner, and when the girl finds out, she starts dissing him for hating lies and bald dudes. Lucky for him, Lucy shows up and helps by injecting a sedative in the girl's butt, getting her out of there. They end up talking about their personal lives, making a special connection, and Lucy gives him a goodbye kiss on the cheek. Come morning, Gru wakes up in a great mood, whips up a big breakfast, and helps some ducklings cross the street, all seeming happy till things change at the mall. Turns out, the anti-villain leagues tracked the Chinese store where they found the lab stuff, wrapping up the case. This news bums Gru out because he's gotta go back to his jam business, while Lucy's shipped off to an Aussie branch for a new mission, killing his buzz. She hands him her lipstick as a parting gift. This instantly changes his mood. His attitude shows he's gone back to being a villain, because he's sad, confessing to Agnes that he's in love with Lucy, but it's too late. Still, he decides to call her, preps what to say, but chickens out last minute and burns the phone. Meanwhile, the minions keep having a blast on Vacai till two of them are lured to some kind of lab, injected with a substance and turned into something ugly. Gru's got no choice but to hit up Fernando's party and tries his best to keep Margot away from Antonio, but fails, feeling down at a table till Fernando cheers him up, saying they're both survivors and more alike than he thinks. Suspicious still, Gru tails him till he discovers the Mexicans got a secret lair, cracking the musical password to get in. Meanwhile, Lucy's en route to Australia when she starts seeing Gru's face everywhere, realizing she's in love with him and decides to pop the plane's emergency door to head home. When our hero enters the lair, he finds out Fernando's none other than El Macho, with the biggest shock being Dr. Nefario's working for him, turning the minions into an army of wild, indestructible creatures. El Macho tells him he admires his villainy from before and wants to team up to be the world's top villains. Gru plays along while trying to escape, but El Macho sends one of the transformed minions after him. And now he freezes Antonio before leaving with his daughters. Hours later, Lucy arrives at the mall, distracted by Fernando, who offers to help but already knows she's with the anti-villain league, so he kidnaps her. Luckily, Dr. Nefario sneaks a call to our hero, telling him what's up, and Gru immediately springs into action, ready to do anything to get back the love of his life. Little does he know, one of the transformed minions has made it to his house, going after his daughters. But Agnes manages to stun it with her screams. Just in time, Dr. Nefario saves him by turning it back to normal with a secret antidote, mixing it into jam for a mass cure. Meanwhile, Gru heads for his new enemy's fortress with the last two minions, disguising them as evil creatures, and luckily getting in fast by making it look like he's their prisoner. But soon, they're found out, causing big trouble as they're chased by these beasts. They all start running like crazy, till they reach the fortress roof, getting cornered until a real miracle happens. Dr. Nefario and the girls show up in a ship with the antidote, using a big jam gadget to blast them and easily get all the minions back. El Macho starts getting worried about this, and Gru seizes the moment to rescue Lucy, but it's almost too late because she's tied to a rocket heading north, the same volcano where the Mexican faked his death and nothing can stop it. Now that El Macho's lost the button to set off the rocket, he takes the last potion left, transforming into a huge, indestructible beast with the intent to take down Gru. In this final battle, our favorite villain uses Lucy's lipstick, which turns out to be a laser gun, and his trusty scientist knocks him out for good. Quickly, Gru races to find his true love, but unfortunately, the store's vigilant chicken gets back at him by hitting the red button, launching the rocket towards the volcano. Along the way, our hero manages to free the girl, and they plan a date. This gives them the motivation they need to survive, and 147 days later, they're all in a beautiful forest having a romantic musical number, cause it's our favorite villains and the anti-villain agent's wedding day. Everyone celebrates happily. Margot gathers the courage to recite a Mother's Day poem, and then they start dancing with their best forbidden moves at an amazing party like one big, happy family. That was Despicable Me 2. Gru gets kicked out of the anti-villain league, has to deal with a powerful diamond thief, and discovers he has a twin brother with aspirations to be a big-time criminal. That is why today on the Summarize, Despicable Me 3. Gru's story continues with a TV report about an old 80s show that ruled in 1985 called Evil Bratt, starring a kid of the same name who was a prodigy and a criminal. His fame was huge until Hollywood canceled him as he grew into a teen, losing his stardom. Now, years later, Bratt still sports the same look despite being over 30. He's become a real villain, using his slick dance moves to sneak onto a cargo ship while Silas and his team sense something's up. Luckily, Gru, Lucy, and a couple of minions are deep-sea diving, aiming to handle the situation. Back on the ship, Bratt's forbidden dance moves lead him to the vault, where he grabs a massive diamond. Using a Rubik's Cube, he dodges the military and with magical bubblegum, sends the ship airborne. Meanwhile, the minions end up flying onto a beach where two cute girls ask if they're okay, and it seems like love at first sight. At the same time, Gru manages to board the ship and faces off with Bratt in a showdown of gadgets until Gru resorts to a water pistol, thanks to his daughters. They end up in a brawl, but Gru manages to snatch the diamond. The problem is Bratt uses a magical keyboard to strip him down and float him away with the gum. When the military arrives, the villain escapes, and Gru is left embarrassed as people mock him and snap photos. The next day, Gru and Lucy head to a secret anti-villain league meeting, where Silas announces his retirement and introduces the new boss, Valerie Da Vinci, a stern and controlling woman. Valerie immediately demands Gru, furious that he let Bratt escape, firing him on the spot. Lucy defends him, saying she'll quit too because she won't leave him, and they're both out of the organization. They return home disappointed, finding the door ajar. Gru is on edge, expecting the worst, but they're kidnapped before they can defend themselves. Fortunately, it's a surprise from their 3 daughters who've planned a romantic honeymoon-like evening, complete with music and gross gummy soup. The girls are thrilled their parents are secret agents and ask about their latest adventures. Gru tells them what happened, and the girls are disappointed they don't have parents with normal jobs. Later, Gru meets with all the minions, who hope they'll go back to being villains as usual. But Gru insists they stay on the straight and narrow. It turns out Dr. Nefario was accidentally frozen in carbonite, and they need him for a crime. In response, the minions put on a presentation, comparing the good old days of villainy to their current boring lives. But it's not enough to convince Gru, who's set on staying out of trouble. This sparks a big argument, and all the minions decide to quit. Well, except for 2 who decide to stay by Gru's side and now manage his lab. Meanwhile, in Paris, Monsieur Pompo arrives on police orders to secure the city's most beautiful diamond. Suddenly, he starts darting the security guards, claiming they've been fooled, revealing it's actually Bratt disguised, who steals the jewel without getting caught. That night, Lucy tries to lift Gru's spirits, feeling like a failure, assuring him everything's okay. In the street, the minion army encounters a suited man trying to find Gru's house, but they won't help him because they want nothing to do with their old boss. At dawn, Gru finds Agnes selling her favorite toys to help since he's unemployed. The suited man returns, revealing his father recently died, and he has a twin brother who wants to reconnect. Gru doesn't believe him since his father died years ago, but the stranger shows him a baby photo, making him start to doubt. He seeks out his mother, who confirms it's true. They split the babies like in The Parent Trap. Thanks to this, Gru's family flies to an island where they find a grand, flashy mansion belonging to the lost twin, filled with pigs, and they have a heartfelt reunion. Gru's brother is named Drew, with a big blonde mane and a great sense of humor, warmly greeting Lucy and the girls while the minions have a blast with the butler. Turns out, Drew's a millionaire with dozens of cars and planes, but none of it convinces our favorite villain, suspicious that something's off. Lucy convinces him to give it a chance, leaving the brothers alone to bond for the first time, while Bratt remembers his glory days with the diamond in his possession. Hours later, the twins walk through the garden. Drew opens a secret gate, and they enter a cave with statues of their ancestors. But the best part is finding their late father's lair, known as Bald Terror, leaving Gru eager for more answers. Drew confesses to Gru that their father always admired him for following in his villainous footsteps, but was constantly disappointed in Drew for not doing the same. So now Drew asks for Gru's help to become a villain in honor of their father's memory. Gru isn't initially convinced, but changes his mind upon seeing their father's powerful car. They take it for a ride together while their family visits a lively village festival, testing Lucy's mothering skills. Meanwhile, Agent Lucy convinces Margot to dance with a rejected boy, but things quickly go awry when she loses track of the other 2 girls. They end up in a shop where the owner claims unicorns are real, sparking excitement in the youngest girl who dreams of seeing one. Luckily, she screams in joy, helping Lucy locate her. The brothers make a pit stop to rob a candy store against Gru's reluctance, getting caught by the police who start chasing them. So now Gru takes charge of the car to ensure their escape. Meanwhile, the minions are tired, hungry, and unsure of what to do, so they decide to chase a pizza delivery guy and get into trouble with the guards. They seek refuge in a place and accidentally end up on a talent show stage where they must improvise a performance. The audience cheers for them, but they're still in trouble as the police surround them. At the beach, Drew is excited about continuing a life of crime and convinces Gru to join him, so Gru suggests stealing the world's best diamond. Back at home, the twins dress up as each other, but it doesn't go over well with their family, although it's clear they get along. Agnes tells Gru she's excited and convinced she'll find a unicorn. Praying for it to happen quickly, Gru decides to go after her to explain unicorns aren't real, but regrets it as he doesn't want to disappoint her. The minions end up in prison, but quickly adapt. One of them reminisces about their adventures with Gru and convinces the others to join him in escaping. Meanwhile, Bratt, dancing 80s style and in possession of the giant diamond, plots revenge while watching his old TV episodes. The younger sisters set out into the forest with all the sweets they can carry, setting a trap to lure a unicorn. Gru briefs his novice brother on the plan, explaining the security measures at Bratt's mansion and assigning him as the getaway driver while he steals the diamond. Initially hesitant, Drew eventually agrees and they quickly suit up to begin the mission. At the same time, Lucy helps Margot fend off a love-struck loser, causing some friction with the boy's mother and proving she can be a protective mom. Lucy notices the twins heading out in the boat and suspects they're up to something. The other two girls are surprised to find a creature eating their sweets, a small goat with a single horn. For some reason, Agnes is convinced it's a real unicorn. As the brothers approach Brett's house, Gru imagines returning the diamond to the Anti-Villain League to reclaim his job, but keeps this from his twin. They embark on their mission, and the novice villain disobeys Gru to get involved. Scaling a perilous wall, things get dicey, but miraculously, they survive. Gru takes the lead while Drew complicates the mission, but they manage to break in, with Gru giving his twin the confidence to carry on. In prison, the minions secretly scheme and manage to escape unnoticed by the police and other inmates. Inside Bratt's mansion, the twins spot him sleeping with the diamond, accidentally waking him, but he mistakes it for an alarm. Continuing onward, they find a room full of the actor's toys, a gum factory, and the twin decides to steal a pair while they follow their rival. This complicates the mission again as Bratt discovers them, but the novice manages to trap him with his magical gum. They're pursued by robot toys, both ending up outside and falling, miraculously rescued by Lucy in a helicopter. Gru tells Lucy his plan to regain his job at the Anti-Villain League, but Drew disagrees, feeling used and lied to for personal gain, causing a rift between them. Back home, Agnes tells Gru she found a unicorn, and he decides to tell her the truth. It's just a goat, trying to teach her a life lesson, but she continues to believe in magic. Lucy, genuinely happy to be home, takes the diamond and boards the girls onto a plane, falling into a trap as it turns out to be Bratt in disguise, with the real Lucy kidnapped. Gru seeks out his twin brother, they reconcile, and together rescue the girls, joined by the minions to form a super squad. Bratt quickly returns to Hollywood with vengeance, causing chaos and destroying the iconic sign, leaving the girls on a building's peak to execute his plan of trapping the city in a giant gumball. Lucy goes after the girls, while the twins battle Bratt's giant robot, including mini robots, in an epic clash, until Drew manages to get inside and disable it just as Bratt is about to harm his brother. The minions unite to destroy the massive gumball over the city, and in an epic dance battle, Gru defeats Bratt, sending him flying far away with his own tricks. Soon after, the brothers reunite with their family and the minions, restoring Hollywood and becoming a happy, effective team once again. Time passes, and we see the girls calling Lucy Mom, Drew now living with them in the lab and sleeping with the minions, convincing them one night to return to a life of crime. That was Despicable Me 3. Don't forget to like, comment on what movies you want to see next, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss our next videos.